Next. Yes, I have. One of the key theological sections of the book of Exodus is chapters 32 to 34, the incident of the golden calf. You remember that part of the first commandment is that God forbids idols. Now, the reason that he forbids idols is that he gives them his name. And we're going to have a look at this theme. Why are idols forbidden? And what is it that replaces an idol? Now, for pagan people, they have access to the glory of their gods, the presence of their gods, through an idol. They access the face of the god. In fact, if you read some of the documents from the ancient world, the idol is called the face of the god. The face of the god. Now, so if you have an idol with you, you have the presence of the god with you. So pagan people wear little idols around their necks and all sorts of places in the body, and they put idols in their houses as a means by which they access the presence of their god. Now you remember that while Moses was on Mount Sinai receiving God's instructions for the building of the tabernacle, for consecrating the priests, and the laws about sacrifice, the altar, the people of Israel were waiting for him at the bottom of the mountain. And they got sick and tired of waiting and thought that they'd seen the last of Moses, and they wanted to ensure for themselves some way of retaining God's presence with them when they left the mountain. And so they think in pagan terms, if we want God to go with us, how is God going to travel with us on our journey? How? An idol of God. So they get Aaron to build an idol. Now, what you need to understand, that this is not an idol of another god, a pagan god, but this is an idol for whom? Their God, the Lord. Okay, that's the incident. And you know the story then, that this upsets God and makes him so angry that he wants to destroy the people and start off all over again. No sooner has he consecrated them that they desecrate him by building an idol. So idolatry is a threat to Israel's survival and God's presence with them. Let's have a look at two passages here. Tony, are you next, or have I? Okay, if you can read chapter 32, 1 to 10. Chapter 32, 1 to 10.
When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, "Come, make us gods. Who will go before us? As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him." Aaron answered them, "Take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons and your daughters are wearing and bring them to me." So all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took what they handed him and made it into an idol, cast in the shape of a calf, fashioning it with a tool. Then they said, These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt."
Just stop there. The translation gods, in Hebrew, the name God is plural. So Elohim. So this is your God. It could also translate. So it's ambiguous. Keep going.
When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf and announced, "Tomorrow there will be a festival to the Lord." So the next day the people rose early and sacrificed burnt offerings and presented fellowship offerings. Afterward they sat down to eat and drink and got up to indulge in revelry. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go down, because your people whom you brought up out of Egypt have become corrupt. They have been quick to turn away from what I commanded them and have made themselves an idol, cast in the shape of a calf. They have bowed down to it and sacrificed to it and have said, 'These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt.' I have seen these people," the Lord said to Moses, "and they are a stiff-necked people. Now leave me alone so that my anger may burn against them and that I might destroy them. Then I will make you into a great nation."
So
Please,
God,
can I go back to the Abrahamic?
Yep.
a covenant with Moses.
Yep. Starting off all over again.
Wow, that would suck.
Okay, and then something remarkable happens. Moses uses the name of God and his access to God's grace to intercede for the people. Moses is the great intercessor in the Old Testament. And here we have 4 very, very important acts of intercession. We haven't got time to read them. I'll only read the last one, or the second last one. But he pleads for God to spare the people and uses his access to God's grace and God's name to pray for them. The first intercession is for the survival of Israel. And God says, okay, Israel will survive. I won't destroy it. But then he adds a threat. Could you read chapter 33, 1 to 3? Please, who's next? God, yes. Yeah. Chapter 33, 1 to 3. God says, okay, I don't want you to sacrifice your life for your people. I won't destroy the people, but this is what?
Then the Lord said to Moses, leave this place, you and the people you brought up out of Egypt, and go up to the land I promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I will give it to your descendants. I will send an angel before you, and drive out the Canaanites, Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites.
Perizzites.
Yeah, pizza sounds cool.
Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites.
Go up to the land of the flowing, go up to the land flowing with milk and honey, but I will not go with you, because you are stiff-necked people, and I might destroy you on the way.
Wow.
Now notice there, God says, you take the people, you want to keep the people, okay, you can be their God. You take them. I'll even send an angel to go with you, but I'm not going to go with you. And he goes one step further, he says, I can't go with you. Why?
Because otherwise he'll destroy them.
He'll destroy them. Why will he destroy them? He's a holy God, they're an unclean people. Bring the two together, it's the end. Now, so first of all, Moses prays for God to spare the people, and he uses the covenant with Abraham to do it, and then he offers himself as a sacrifice. God refuses, and he says, no, you take the people. And then you get the third intercession, which I'd like to read, chapter 33, 12 to 17, please, David. And this is the culminating 33, 12 to 17. Now, it picks up God's statement about him not going with his people because he will destroy them.
Moses said to the Lord, you have been telling me, leave these people, but you have not let me know whom you will send with me. You have said, I know you by name, and you have found favor with me. If you are pleased with me, teach me your ways, so I may know you and continue to find favor with you. Remember that this nation is your people.
Just stop there, pause. Remember that this nation is not my people, but your people. Teach me your ways. Show me what kind of a God you are. Okay, keep going now.
The Lord replied, my presence will go with you, and I will give you rest.
Now, in English, something is lost here. God says, my presence will go along. There's no with you there. And I will give you singular rest. So what God is promising, or seems to be promising, his presence not with his people, but his presence with Moses. And he says he'll give Moses rest in the land. He'll settle Moses in the land. Now, Moses takes God at his word and he goes for broke in this intercession. Can you go on reading?
Then Moses said to him, if your presence does not go with us, do not send us up from here.
What's he doing? If your presence doesn't go along with us. He takes God's promise to him and he extends it to the people. And he says, look, if your presence doesn't go with us, we're going to stay here. Keep going.
How will anyone know that you are pleased with me and with your people unless you go with us? What else will distinguish me and your people from all the people on the face of the earth? And the Lord said to Moses, I will do the very thing you have asked, because I am pleased with you and I know you by name.
I don't know, but so God promises that his presence will go not just with Moses, but with the people. But what's the problem still going to be?
They still might get destroyed.
It still might be destroyed, which leads to the last intercession, because God's presence with his people is of no use to them unless the last thing that Moses prays for falls into place. Okay, can you read, please, Levi, chapter 34, verse 9, very simple intercession.
O Lord, if I have found favour in your eyes, he said, then let the Lord go with us. Although this is a stiff-necked people, forgive our wickedness and our sin, and take us as your inheritance.
So what does he do? He prays
Forgiveness of sins.
forgiveness of sins. That God will be present with his people, not as judge, but as a forgiving God who atones for their sins and forgives the sins, and not forgiving the sins of good people, but stiff-necked people. So the presence of a gracious God, a forgiving God. And he can pray that prayer because God has told him something about himself. And we'll come to that. If we had time, I'd like to go through every single verse here and look at it closely because it's very profound. Just two other things about Moses as intercessor. I said already that in the Old Testament, Moses is the great intercessor. He spares the people by his intercession. Why does Israel survive? Because Moses interceded for them. He went as far as to offer himself to atone for the sins of his people. God refused that. Why did God refuse it?
It wasn't just.
Well, then you'd have to get rid of the whole of the New Testament.
Moses wasn't perfect.
Moses wasn't perfect, and God already had in mind something else. Who alone can offer himself to atone? God's own Son. So Moses offers to do what Jesus eventually did, but God declines the offer of Moses. Which brings me to the second point, that Moses here is a